There's some more NHL signings to discuss today, including a couple of newly drafted prospects for the 2020 NHL Draft. We'll jump into all those details coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned today, we're taking a look at some more NHL signings. A lot of these players are either newly drafted rookies getting their entry-level deals or some RFAs in there and some UFAs here quite as well. So let's jump right into the details and get started with the number 2 overall pick from the Los Angeles Kings. Quinton Byfield signs his entry-level contract. The big center from the Sudbury Wolves will be able to make a fair bit of money, including all of his bonuses. Of course, as usual, his cap hit will be $925,000 per year for the 3-year contract, but there's a lot of Schedule A and Schedule B bonuses in there where he can earn an additional $2.6 million per season depending on certain metrics that he's able to attain. So obviously he can earn well over $10 million over the 3 years depending on how he performs. So a nice contract there for Byfield. Usually, obviously, the higher they're drafted, they get more bonus opportunities than other players, but still nothing too shocking in that regard. Like Lafreniere's contract that he got as a first overall, I think was just slightly more on the bonus side, but very little difference there. So nice for the Kings to officially have Byfield in the organization and under contract. Now, the other 2020 NHL draftee that was signed today was the San Jose Sharks signing their first-round pick, Ozzie Weisblatt, who was a late first-round selection, but still got his contract here right away. A player who looks like he could be a pretty exciting prospect. It was a pretty deep NHL draft, so even players drafted late in that first round still have a lot of upside. Even players that went into the second round as well. There were some that fell into the early and middle part of that second round that was still somewhat surprising, and I still think will be a good chunk of them will be pretty good NHL players. So Weisblatt, of course, gets his entry-level contract as well. His average annual value will be $897,500, of course, because he's a later draft pick. He doesn't quite get so many bonus opportunities as guys like Byfield and Lafreniere will see, but obviously he's a pretty exciting prospect for the Sharks, who in my opinion didn't have an overly deep prospect pool, so that's a good prospect for them to pick up. Of course, they would have been selecting number 3 overall, but of course that pick belonged to the Senators that they gave up on an Erik Karlsson trade, so they could have certainly had a pretty solid prospect, either Tim Stützle or somebody comparable, depending on who they would have selected if they hadn't made that deal. But I'm sure they probably are quite happy to have Erik Karlsson on their blue line for the next 7-8 years here. So now let's take a look at some other contracts signed today, including restricted free agent forward Andrew Mangiapane of the Calgary Flames. This is certainly a well-deserved, hard-working player who's worked his way up here and gets himself a 2-year contract valued at $2.4 million. Except he's gone through his time in the minors. He's certainly, like I said, he's a guy who you can't help but cheer for. He's well-deserved here on this contract. He was scheduled to go to an arbitration hearing, but the Flames and him have come to an agreement well in advance, so that will be avoided here. Obviously, a lot of these players that we're going to see here in the coming days have filed for arbitration, and most of those cases usually get settled before the hearing, so we will see how many of them actually end up going to the arbitration cases. The Ottawa Senators have signed another one of their restricted free agent forwards. That's the second in as many days here, bringing back Rudy Balcers on a 1-year contract valued at $735,000. Of course, this is a 2-way contract as well. We'll pay him $70,000 at the American Hockey League level. So Balcers is another one of those pieces that came over from the Sharks in the Carlsson trade that we already talked about. And he certainly had his moments in the NHL. He's seen some time. Looks like a pretty decent prospect. Not really a given yet that he makes the team in the coming season. He's going to have a lot of competition with a lot of other great-looking prospects, especially in that forward division of players. There's lots of guys there that very well could be on the fringe of making it, depending on what other veterans the Senators bring in. But Balcer is certainly a guy worth keeping around. They still have guys like Chris Tierney and Connor Brown are the main RFAs left. And it'll be interesting to see if they do circle back on Anthony Duclair, even though he was made a UFA because they didn't qualify him. Wouldn't be shocking if they come back and talk to him a little bit further since he hasn't signed elsewhere as of yet. The Columbus Blue Jackets have signed defenseman Gabriel Carlsson to a 2-year contract extension as well. Now, this is a 2-way deal in the year 1, and it's a 1-way deal in the second year. So, obviously, he'll have a much more earning opportunity potential in year 2. Clearly, based on other moves they've made on their blue line, looks like by next year he'll have much more of a better opportunity to be staying at the NHL level on a more regular basis, which is why they would have structured it that way. But we've seen the Blue Jackets move out some players, especially on the blue line, so there will be a little bit more opportunity. Of course, not hard to say if they're actually done organizing their roster Wouldn't be shocking if they do bring in another veteran as well. So we'll see. But good contract for Carlsson, who still has a fair bit of potential after putting in a lot of time in the American Hockey League over the past few years. Now, we saw the Carolina Hurricanes sign a trio of players, including former Toronto Maple Leaf high draft pick Jeremy Bracco. Now, Bracco was a player in the Leaf system who had a lot of promise, a lot of potential. He performed very well at the American Hockey League level. Never really got much of an NHL opportunity. Many felt last year especially that he was going to be likely at least a trade bait piece for them to help acquire other pieces for their roster. That never materialized, never happened. And then he was not given a qualifying offer as a restricted free agent this offseason, so he became a UFA. So now he'll go to the Carolina Hurricanes organization. Of course, we know the Hurricanes have coveted many of the Leafs forwards here in the last year, so lots of trade talks between those two teams. But this is not a player that we've heard of, at least in the past, of them keeping an eye on, because I know they had apparently had interest in like Nylander and Kapanen in the past when their names were brought up before. So we'll see how Bracco makes out and if he can get himself an NHL opportunity, but it is a two-way contract here as well. The Carolina Hurricanes have also signed minor leaguers Sheldon Rempel and David Gus. They both get 1 year, two-way contracts. Both of them have been minor leaguers for the past few years, so they more likely play in their AHL affiliate. Now, of course, we also saw as well that the Philadelphia Flyers have come to terms with RFA forward Nolan Patrick. Patrick actually wasn't a full restricted free agent, like he wasn't eligible for an offer sheet because he hadn't played enough games. He missed the entire season last year battling injury due to a migraine issue that he was having. I'm not sure exactly where his health status is right now. I'm assuming that he should be able to play next year. At this point, they've signed him to a new contract where he basically just accepted his qualifying offer, which is basically 105% of last year's earnings, so he's just a hair under $900,000. So obviously in the case of Patrick here, it's not much of a raise, but really he didn't play last year. It's an easy negotiation on both sides. Obviously they gave him what was required. He accepted to keep him in the organization, and it wasn't really worth them going to arbitration where he didn't play last year. So that is all your signings here for today. I will be back a little bit later with some more NHL trade and free agent rumors as we're kind of gathering all the intel from around the NHL to see what else might be happening here in the coming days. So stay tuned for that here in the short little while. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.